Mr. Alex Hankey is a theoretical physicist trained at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Cambridge University. He was the postdoctoral fellow at the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center. Mr. Alex is deeply interested in Vedanta, yoga, and Ayurveda. He played a vital role in setting up Maharishi University of Management and later on became a professor at it, where he taught the first undergraduate course in philosophy of science.
When you go to these critical instabilities, you can couple self-awareness, self-aware consciousness to the organism, even single cells. I have a wonderful friend who's an honorary fellow of what was Stephen Hawking's college, Caius College, Cambridge, where he introduced me many years ago to Stephen Hawking. And he's called Brian Ford. He's written 50 books translated into 60 languages. Actually, it might be 60 books translated into 50 languages. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, Brian Ford, points out the miracles that you see in single cells. Do you know that if you follow a single cell sitting in the bloodstream and you have it on a microscope slide, you can see that that single cell is able, astonishingly, it's able to push aside, it's a white cell. It pushes aside the erythrocytes and it actually chases the bacteria it's trying to get at. You can see it's an active, intentional process. Let me tell you another miracle. There are certain forms of amoebae which live in places like what you have here in Pune. It's very wet for half the year, horribly wet. And then it gets very hot and dry, horribly hot and dry, for the rest of the year. Now, you know that amoebae can't survive without water. They're not designed to. What do? The answer is that they pick up little pieces of silica, or sometimes other microorganism skeletons. They get a pile of them, and they build what looks, to all intents and purposes, like an igloo. They glue these bricks into place around them. Now, imagine, for the purposes of argument, that you're an amoeba. And all you have is the ability to put out pseudopoda with your cytoskeleton. And you know, how do you know that you've gathered those pieces? Somehow you have the knowledge that there's a little pile of bricks. And you put the bricks up, you glue them in place. Nobody knows what glue they use, but they do. And then you get to the stage where there's just 3 gaps up here. And you hope you've got enough bricks on the inside to fill those gaps. And you pick up the last 3 bricks and you put them in. And then you're safe. You know, all our psychologist friends, somebody here is studying psychology intensely, probably several people have told me, and they will say, oh, don't believe this free will nonsense. You're just a machine. Everything's just digital. Everything just is automated reactions to stimuli. Unfortunately, it isn't. Or fortunately, rather. Fortunately, we seem to have this potential for intelligence, which yoga understands deeply, in which we can make choices. The theory I've developed for nervous systems also applies to genetic networks. it gives a description of a sukshma level of reality which supports some kind of conscious intelligence even at the level of single cells. It depends on the subtle levels of reality, and now let me explain how the subtle levels come in. We have classical physics up here. We have quantum physics supporting it. Quantum physics describes atoms and molecules, and lots of other things like metal crystals and superconductors and lasers, okay, to give you a few examples. But between classical physics and quantum physics, there is this ill-defined range of physics which you heard described by the very kind gentleman who introduced me, an area called critical phenomena, in which I wrote my PhD. It turns out that these critical instabilities are neither classical physics nor quantum physics, and I have, in the process of showing that they provide a beautiful description of the sukshma levels of reality. Now, if I said nothing more today, I think I would have filled your heads quite full enough with some incomprehensible scientific mysteries. So I thought that I would have mercy, as we say, in the West, and I would just see what the next slide is. Next. This is part one. Yes, go down part one. Next, please. Next. Yes, I thought I would spare you for a few minutes and talk a little bit about yoga, which after all is where I come from, yoga and meditation. Most of us think of yoga as being yoga asanas. When we go to International Day of Yoga, and when I'm told every Thursday something like 4,000 people gather in a single place to do yoga at MIT, on which I heartily congratulate you all, what you have is mostly a yoga asana program, and then pranayama. And people, it gives me great pain. They translate pranayama as breath control, because that's the way it's been mistranslated in all the text. Yama, of course, is death. And we're meant to slow down the breathing rate. Sometimes the breathing rate will stop. Some people perform kumbhaka, right? They stop the breath. They control it. But when you meditate, the breath will spontaneously slow down. It may stop for periods in experienced meditators. We've seen 45, 50 seconds. And there is no compensatory breathing. There's no strain. This breathless state is famous. But if you try and induce it by kumbhaka, it can give very dangerous reactions. So the thing is that after pranayama, which means the enlivenment of the prana is not this growth, which you see all the athletes doing. Runners, bicyclists, swimmers, they're all struggling for breath. The Ironman competition, they're running out of breath as much as they can, right? The pranayama is the enlivenment of the subtle prana. Someone listed it yesterday. I think it was wonderful professor of surgery the day before. Prana, udana, samana, vyana, apana. And then there are the 5 upavayus, which I can never remember. Okay? So you enliven the prana, and by enlivening the prana, on a subtle level, you actually reverse the problems that have been caused to the pranic energy by causing emotional problems, which cause problems in the prana. So, Anga 5, coming after pranayam, is called Pratyahar. And if I ask anyone what Pratyahar means, they will say, oh, it means withdrawal of the senses from the outer world. And I say to them, is this easy or difficult? Oh, it's very, very difficult. You can only do it if you're a very, very, very experienced sadhu. So now, what I propose to do as part of this exercise of giving you a rest is to give you some simple instructions which I'm going to ask you to follow. Okay? This is only going to take 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm going to ask you to sit very easily, make yourself comfortable on your chairs, and I'm just going to give you some instructions to close the eyes and open the eyes. Just, I'd be grateful, follow the instructions carefully. So let's sit comfortably and let's close our eyes. And now again, please open the eyes, everyone. I see people with their eyes closed. Please open your eyes. And now again, let's close our eyes. Open the eyes. And again, close the eyes. Slowly open the eyes. Slowly open the eyes. So I ask everyone this very simple question. When we close our eyes, naturally we become aware of some quietness. Yes? Did you feel some quietness? There may be some noise, some hiss from a fan or something, but basically there's a sense of easiness or quietness on the inside. Yes? Good, good. Now, did you notice that this quietness is on the inside rather than the hissing and slight noises on the outside? It's definitely not being experienced that way. Okay? Not through the ears. It feels quietness on the inside. So, when you experience the quietness, is the attention directed outwards or inwards? Inwards, right? So now let's do it again. And I'm just going to ask you to sit very innocently, don't expect anything. Sit very easily for about 20-25 seconds, become aware of the quietness, and then just see if you can let yourself feel the quietness. Feel the quietness. And we'll do that for just a couple of minutes. Please close your eyes and follow that instruction. Slowly open the eyes. Slowly open the eyes. How many people, if you felt this, please put up your hand. How many people felt that there was some sense of deeper peace by allowing yourself to go deeper into the quietness? As Maharishi Mahesh Yogi used to say, almost everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, the first process is turning the attention away from the outer world. Does anyone know the name for that? Turning the attention away from the senses. Pratyahar. That's the first bit. This process of naturally sinking deeper has another name in yoga. Yes, madam, you're nodding your head. Can you offer me the answer? Dhyan. Dhyan. It's that simple. This is the secret of the Shankaracharyas. This is the secret of Shankara's Nata Sampradaya. It's also the secret of Santa Dhyyaneshwara's Nata Sampradaya, because one of the current top students in that Nata Sampradaya was my graduate student, and we have compared notes in detail. The idea that dhyan is difficult is wrong. It doesn't actually require any kind of concentration. I'm going to give you one further exercise. We're going to repeat those 2 minutes just for fun, if you can bear it. And after about half a minute, I want you to either have an idea of the sound or an idea of the image of Omkar. And just wait for 15, 20 seconds, and then just drop that image into the silence, into the quietness again. Did everyone understand? I will repeat this. We're going to close our eyes, very innocently be aware of what we feel. Feel the quietness, and then just have an idea. Not the word, but an idea. Omkar. Om, not Omkar. Idea, Om. Or the visual image. Om. Namaskar. So let's close the eyes and try this exercise. Jai Gurudeva. Just take half a minute and then open the eyes slowly. Take half a minute, sitting easily, then open the eyes slowly. Now let me ask you all a simple question. Did you notice when you released the thought, the idea of Omkar, that it somehow changed the quality of the silence a little bit? Anyone notice this? That the effect of the Om is to somehow increase the depth or strengthen the silence. This is a much more advanced process Yoga Sutras Pada 3 talks about Dharan, Dhyan, Samadhi. Then it says, Trayamekatra Samyama. The three together, you're in the silence, and you take some thought and go to the silence. Dharan, Dhyan combined into Samadhi. This is the process called Samyama. Now, Samyama is the system that the rishis used to educate their children, because no rishi could serve the Vedic society, the Vedic civilization, to his fullest extent, unless he had the siddhis that would enable him to use his full potential in service of the people, his family, his friends, his village, his city if he lived in Harappa or one of these big towns. These techniques have been taught since well before 3000 BC. Let me explain to you why I put that date, and I absolutely deny the dates that were given by Max Muller and that rascally Lord Macaulay. There is a famous Tamil saint called Tirumular. How many of us have heard of Tirumular? Tiru means saint, Santa, if you prefer, from Maharashtra. Santa Mular. He writes a description. He was Agastya's student. And he writes a description of yoga in ancient Tamil. And that system of yoga has 8 limbs. And the names of all the limbs agree precisely and exactly and precisely with the 8 Ashtangas named by Maharshi Patanjali. Now we know that he lived about 3000 BC. How do we know this? Because from Chennai and that region of Tamil Nadu, where Maharshi Agastya settled, the wisdom of the nadis and the Sukshma Sharir went to China. And it was so successful in China in formulating a new system of medicine that the Yellow Emperor ordered the best doctors in China to write down everything they knew about their system of medicine, taking the pulse from the marma points and classifying the strength and quality of the energies in the 12 main nadis on each side of the body, and the 2 going up the front, back, and down the front, the great hammer meridian and the reception vessel, which have got very precise names in the Indian system. It's the main nadi for prana, which is yang qi, and the reception vessel is the sushumna, the main vessel for yin qi. And with these basically 14 meridians, but more because the 12 are on either side, so you get 26 or even 28. With these meridians, they were able to monitor the subtle energies and cure every disease. They were so successful at it in China. I needed to tell you that classic on Chinese medicine, because the Chinese kept dates religiously. They kept dates properly. 2695, about 2700 BC. So Maharshi Agastya came to Tamil Nadu probably a good 100 or 200 years before that, at least, 3000 BC. This ditches the Max Muller, Lord Macaulay dating system once and for all. Please, any time you see someone anywhere saying, oh, Maharshi Patanjali lived somewhere between 300 BC and 200 AD, And he followed Nagarjuna's ideas to the letter. Please give them a hefty kick up, whatever we kick people up. Tell them that it's absolutely rejected. Yoga is at least 5,000 years old, which after all is the traditional date we put on Lord Krishna, who said, Yoga karamasu kashala. So let's continue, if you can bear it. I've got about 15 minutes left to me. So I want to talk to you quickly about sections of the Vedic literature in part 2. I'm going to be very selective. The most compact, beautiful, and wonderful, in my opinion, Upanishad is the Mandukya Upanishad, which is absolutely the shortest, and it describes the states of consciousness. The Mundaka Upanishad describes the witness, Sakshi, which I was bold enough to mention a couple of days ago. Then I want to talk a little bit about Shiksha Vedanga, because this tells you about the stages of transcendence. And I want to talk to you about Jyotish, the Jyotisha Darshana, the sixth of the Shad Darshanas, because I have some students who have made some absolutely fantastic discoveries using the Jyotish Darshana. So next slide, please. So, Mandukya Upanishad, it describes states of consciousness. Waking state in the 3rd verse, the dream state in the 4th verse, the deep sleep state in the 5th verse. Sorry, I'm using the word verse. If it's an Upanishad, it's probably a richer, because it's the Jnana Kanda of one of the 4 Vedas. The 4th state of consciousness is given 2 verses. Verses 6 and 7 means it's twice as important, right? And what it says, essentially, is that this forms the basis and the foundation of the other states of consciousness. And experimentally, you learn to witness these other states. So if you look at the bottom line on that slide, which follows on from what the Mundaka Upanishad describes the witness. When we experience the process of experiencing something, looking or tasting, hearing, we realize that there are 2 aspects of consciousness if we are experienced in sadhana. There's the aspect of consciousness which pecks the fruit and enjoys. And then there's the yoga aspect of consciousness which witnesses. And that witness has been developed by systematic, persistent experience of pure consciousness in the silence by practicing dhyan. It's that simple. And then it says, verse 8, what happens to those who witness waking state consciousness? Nature supports all their actions, they're guaranteed success. Those who witness the dream state of consciousness, they gain the subtle powers to act on the subtle levels of reality in the same way with what in Bhagavad Gita Lord Krishna calls Nishkaram Kriya, action which does not generate negative effects for the actor. What was Arjuna's question at the beginning of Gita? You're expecting me to kill all my kinsmen? You want me to gain all that awful karma for killing people? And Lord Krishna says to him, don't worry about that. I'll take care of your karma. Dedicate your actions to me, and you won't accrue the karma. I will free you of all of it.